I'm 23 now, but this happened when I was like 6 or 7. I've told a few people about it, and I know it sounds crazy, but my older brother was there with me, and he remembers everything the exact same way. Like word for word. We even randomly bring it up sometimes just to make sure we're not losing it or making stuff up. We've called each other mid-conversation with someone else, like, "Yo, tell them what happened again." Anyway, here's what went down. Some quick context. I grew up in Hawaii, out in the country, way up in the mountains. At the time, it was just me, my mom, and my older brother at home. My brother was 12 or 13. My stepdad was out with our other brothers running errands or something, and my biological dad lived down the mountain like 45 minutes away. Me and my brother were chilling in our room playing video games. At some point, we noticed it got dark, and the hallway light outside our door was off. We got a little spooked. I remember peeking out and seeing my mom's bedroom light on and her door open, but the rest of the house was pitch black. I think she told us earlier she was going to take a bath. I don't fully remember, but somehow we knew she was in the bath. So we go to check on her. Her bedroom is empty, so we go knock on the bathroom door. No answer. We keep knocking, calling out, asking if she's okay. Still nothing. Eventually, we just go in, and the tub is full of water, but she's not in there. No mom. Nothing else weird, just a full tub, empty room, and the rest of the house in total darkness. At this point, we're both pretty freaked. My brother puts me on my mom's bed, and he starts calling out for her in the hallway. The way our house was set up, the hallway went past our rooms and off to the left towards the living room. He's calling out. Nothing. So he comes back and starts trying to call her phone. No answer. Then, the part that still messes me up. We heard a whisper, like clear as day, like someone literally leaned in and whispered right in our ears. It was so real, it felt like my mom was sitting right beside us, whispering something secretly to each of us individually. The first thing we heard was, "He's hiding." I screamed. My brother immediately threw my mom's blanket over my head, hugged me tight, and told me to close my eyes. Then, the same voice, same whisper, but louder. "He has no face." We both lost it. My brother starts calling my stepdad like, "We can't find mom. Weird stuff's happening. I don't know what's going on." He told us to stay put and said he was coming home. Then, we called our biological dad too, because depending on where he was, he might get there faster. We just sat there in my mom's room for like 20 to 30 minutes. Nothing else happened, but we were terrified. Eventually, my stepdad got home with our older brothers, who were in high school. We'd already told them what happened, so they immediately started tearing through the house. Attic, closets, everything. My stepdad went toward the living room, and I don't remember exactly how he found her, but I remember hearing people talking and coming out to the living room. She was just sitting in the rocking chair. My stepdad was crouched in front of her, holding her hands, talking to her. I don't even remember what he was saying, but then suddenly, she started laughing. Like this wild, hysterical laugh. Not funny ha-ha laughing, scary laughing. Just non-stop for like a full minute. Then she jumped up out of nowhere, ran to her bathroom, and started throwing up. And what came out wasn't normal. It was black, like pitch black. We were all just standing there like, what the actual heck is going on? After that, she was fine, like totally normal. But the craziest part? She didn't remember any of it. She said the last thing she remembered was setting up her bath. Nothing after that. She still doesn't remember anything to this day. So yeah, that happened, and it still messes me up. That whispering part especially. It felt so real. And the words, "He's hiding. He has no face." Just know. I'll never forget that. Thanks for listening. I just had to get that off my chest again. This happened a couple weeks ago. I'm a female dog walker, and I spend a lot of time by myself in various parks and forests, so I'm pretty aware of my surroundings, but haven't had anything happen until now. So, I'm walking my littles, a pack of 3 small breed dogs, essentially the opposite of scary dog privileges. And this man comes out of nowhere and straight up to me. He is middle-aged, thin, and in shorts and a hoodie, but nothing ringing any alarm bells. He just looks like a normal guy. He strikes up a conversation, and I'm polite, just talking about the weather, and thinking he's just a friendly stranger. When out of nowhere he says, "I saw another lady dog walker yesterday, and she said she had a nervous dog, so I was trying to help socialize him." Which is weird, because it didn't sound like he knew the dog walker in question, and my assumption was confirmed when he continued, "Yeah, I know about dogs, so I took up my slip lead and tried to get him to use it, and she freaked out." For anyone who doesn't know, this is like a slip knot that tightens if the dog pulls on it. Then, while I'm trying to process what the heck he's talking about, he takes out a slip lead out of his pocket and shows it to me. At which point, one of my dogs, who normally loves everyone, starts a warning growl. He just laughs, and I'm starting to feel super uneasy, because he doesn't have any dogs with him, and why does he have what is essentially a strangulation device just in his pocket? Eventually, I manage to get away, saying something about my dad waiting in the car, and he watches me walk away while my dogs keep growling back at him. Once in my car, I actually processed what he said and did, and everything my gut was telling me was off about the situation, so I decided to call the police to report him. They take it seriously, and I've warned other dog walkers about him. But yeah, strange man with a slip lead and no dogs. Let's not meet. Hi. I don't really post on Reddit, but this sub made me remember this one freaky time when I was 16, and a freaky dude approached me whilst I was going home. FYI, I am now 18, and I have thankfully moved an hour away from my previous house a couple months ago. I don't think I'll ever recover from this encounter, but I definitely did learn from it. So, during the day that it had happened, I was really upset and had left college early, as I had mental health concerns at the time. I'm in the UK, so college starts at 16. I was then approached by this man who looked like he was in his 30s. I'm not sure, but he definitely wasn't 20 or 16. He wore this dark puffer jacket and had a weird grey bag, kind of like those family holiday bags that you take for camping, and he had a weird cap. Unfortunately, my brain cut out anything else he was wearing, so that's all I can mention. There might be missing fragments of this tragic incident, as my brain tends to cut out most traumatic things, but I'll try my best to word the things I do recall from this. Anyway, he asked me how I was doing, and me being the gullible teen I was, I assumed he noticed I was upset and genuinely cared about my feelings and was just being nice. I'm a really anxious person from past incidents of being followed and harassed, but for some reason, I didn't feel weirded out at first. Anyways, me being the nice person I was, I took off my earphones and replied to him with a simple, "Oh, I'm a bit okay. How about you?" I figured he was just a neighbor or something. I really hate myself for not finding it weird that he was wandering around in such attire and approached me in the streets. Actually, coming to think of it, I found it weird how nobody really stepped out. Like the area it happened was between 2 lanes of apartment houses, but I guess whoever did hear was probably too frightened, or the situation was that silent to be heard. The conversation is pretty casual until he asked me which college I go to, which I blindly would have answered correctly, but something inside me ticked, because he was clearly looking at my bright green lanyard that had my college logo on it as he asked, which felt really suspicious. I was nervous, because I didn't know if I should lie, or if it was a stupid idea considering the answer was in his face. I ended up truthfully telling him which college I went to, which was obviously bad, but what could I do if I had my lanyard which told him anyways? I started to feel uneasy, like I genuinely just wanted to cry in the moment, because I knew I couldn't just take my phone out and cry for help, because something in the moment told me he might hit me or something. He instantly asked me if I'd like to go to his place right after, and I stutter an awful lie, like, "Oh, my mom really wants me to go collect her shopping." So he tells me it's okay, and that we could hang out another time, which finally rung a bell for me that I was definitely in danger, even if it wasn't serious. I don't know this guy. I have no clue if it's my neighbor, and he's approached me whilst I'm alone on a quiet street. I tried to make excuses to walk away, but he just kept talking. I was kind of feeling frustrated at this point, but even if I was mad that he was taking up my time, there really wasn't much I could do because I was smaller than him, and I was also terrified at the same time. Finally, the conversation is close to an end, and this guy asks me where I live. Figuring the safest thing I could do is lie, I point to a direction that didn't lead to my house, but he ended up laughing and correcting my arm to make sure it pointed directly to my house. I'm more creeped out at the fact that he said, "Don't lie, you always come from down there," because I feel like that meant he had been watching me for days. By then, I shut the conversation down completely and tell him my mom's going to get really mad at me if I don't get home this instant, considering I'd be home by now, and he smiles and watches me leave before continuing his talk. I'm obviously crying and ringing for my mom to let me in, because we live in a 3-story apartment, and I tell her what happened. Like an average mother, she doesn't listen to me, and goes outside to confront him, which upsets me a little considering it caused him to run away by the time we called the police. They couldn't find him. Speaking of police, on Neighborhood Watch, a couple of our actual neighbors mentioned how they saw him hanging around the primary school that was behind the street that he interacted with me. This really grossed me out, because I'm pretty sure I told him my age at the time too, which was 16. My neighbors unfortunately did not have any sort of CCTV footage of the man. This was aside from one lady, but for some reason she was completely refusing to hand it over to my mom, which is unfortunate. I am really thankful I never felt nice enough to say okay to going over to his house, and I'm thankful I never saw him again. What I'm not thankful for is the fact that I always feel like I'm being watched. I have no idea if it's a trauma thing, or if it's just normal, but I really hate it. So weird guy with that weird puffer jacket, let's never meet again. So, this recounting is a bit old, as this happened about 12 years ago, in the late summer. I was 17 at the time, living in Tennessee in Amish country. I tended to stay up later than one should when school was coming up the following mornings, and as such, I often got saddled with the ever-exciting task of taking my mother's dogs out to do their business. Now, a bit of context. We lived out in the valley in the woods. Not quite middle of nowhere, but you definitely couldn't see any neighbors, and it would be a hike through the forest to reach them on foot, excluding the old dirt road that wound up along the bottom of the valley. I worked with my stepfather in a wood shop he had built on the land, and that was what we lived off of. Cutting boards, cabinets, wine racks, furniture, etc. We usually sold out of state, as there weren't too many affluent people buying wine racks and end-grain butcher blocks out in the country. We had some big dogs that kept the coyotes and any strays away from our chickens, but my mom wanted these cutesy purse dogs. So when I say they were my mom's dogs, that's what I mean. The fur balls were yippy little Pomeranians, with food aggression and no sense of self-preservation. Regardless, I was the one taking them outside. At 2 a.m. Now, normally they would strangle themselves at the ends of their leashes to get down the stairs faster, because they loved running at odd hours like the little spaz balls they were. But this time, I didn't even realize that they had not moved until I was the one tugging on the end of the leash. I looked back up, confused, and again tugged at their leash once or twice to get their attention, but they were stood still. They stood on the first and second step, completely frozen and staring off to the side of the stairs and into the center yard. Ears back, no sounds. The only movement was their micro-adjustments when I pulled at their collars. Now, our yard itself had a driveway that ran up to the garage that was connected to the woodshop, and the house ran perpendicular to that, forming sort of a disconnected L shape. With the veritable wall of the woods all around that clearing, it formed something almost like a courtyard in the middle, and that was lit at all hours of the night by the woodshop's floodlight. All that to say, it wasn't at all dark, obscured, or eerie when I finally followed the line of sight of these two normally spazzy dogs. Standing in the middle of the gravel, right in the light and beside our old firewood pile, was something. It looked human at first. It was certainly humanoid. Bipedal, clear head and shoulders, no body hair. Completely naked. It was like putting a puzzle together in slow motion. My brain didn't quite realize what I was looking at first, and just assumed human shape. No immediate alarm bells, despite how seeing a naked man standing in our driveway should have triggered something. I blame shock, or maybe the lack of time to process. Either way, in the couple of seconds I stared, I started to pick out all the abnormalities. It didn't look like it had ears, or hair, at all. It was completely bald. That was the first thing I noticed, since it was facing away and slightly diagonal from me. It appeared to be wringing its hands and staring off to the forest past the woodshop's tin roof. It almost looked nervous, though I never saw its face. It didn't appear to have noticed me, or if it had, it didn't seem to care at that point. It wasn't like I was quiet. The front door was anything but silent, and I had clomped down those stairs with all the grace of a drunken moose, cooing saturine baby speak to the dogs to cover up the underlying insults. Something akin to, "Hurry up, you furry little poop machines." Then it was the skin I noticed. It looked pale and bluish, though the color might have been just from the shop light. And it was weirdly shiny, like frog skin or a waterlogged corpse. Then the torso, as my eyes made their way down. It was too short, like the proportions were off, and after registering it, it was also shaped wrong. Have you ever seen a scrawny dog or cat that gets soaked in water or shaved? How their torso is elliptical front to back instead of side to side like a person's? Its torso was shaped like that. It was bony in the same strange way too. Not malnourished, just like an animal. And finally, the king that kickstarted my brain back up. The legs. They bent the wrong way. I apparently would be the person who dies in a horror movie, because my immediate knee-jerk reaction after staring at this thing was to step off the stairs towards it, squinting as if it would help me understand this biological puzzle before me. The moment my foot hit the ground, its back shot up straight. It reminded me of when a rabbit hears something, and just bolts upright with its ears up, scanning for danger. And then, before I could even lift my other foot, it was just gone. No poof, no fade. I didn't even blink my eyes. It was just there one moment, and then gone the next. As soon as it was gone, the dogs simply returned to normal and wandered down the stairs to do their business. I'm not sure if it was never a threat, or if the little balls of fur were just especially stupid. I'm not ashamed to say that I may have cut their nighttime stroll a bit shorter than normal that evening. I spent a while just calling it Bunny Man, sticking with the theme of things like Mothman and Slenderman I had come to know. I know, very creative. I'd picked the name because, between the inverted legs and its mannerisms, it had indeed reminded me of a rabbit, with the legs resembling a bunny's haunches. Anyways, I never saw it again since then. I know that's a bit anticlimactic, but I figured I'd share my encounter here. I am an alcoholic, and I have been sober for 9 years. That is, without a doubt, my proudest accomplishment. I started getting help during my sophomore year of high school. Looking back, I am so grateful for the timing. If I had hit rock bottom later, things only would have gotten worse. My parents actually transferred me to a different school so I could start fresh and meet new people. By the time I turned 18, a few months before graduation, I had already been sober for over 2 years. That was around the time I started aging out of most of the teen recovery programs. A lot of the counselors I worked with only focused on youth cases, so I had to start finding adult support groups. I grew up in Los Angeles, but not the touristy part. My neighborhood had a liquor store every few blocks, and corner shops with thick plexiglass windows. Alcoholism was really common and normalized. So once the teen programs ended for me, I started going to early morning AA meetings on Tuesdays and Thursdays. They were held in a small church near my school. I did not have first period on those days, so it worked out perfectly. After the meetings, I would usually stay for a couple extra minutes to write in my journal or just sit in quiet. One morning, this guy stayed after the meeting and asked me what I was writing. I told him I was journaling. He said he liked the idea and wanted to try it himself, After that, he started sitting next to me at every meeting. We would talk a bit afterward. He seemed normal. He was about my age. He knew I was about to graduate and asked if I planned to keep coming to that group during the summer. I told him I was not sure yet. I had just gotten a job across town and was looking into meetings closer to where I would be working. I could tell he did not love that answer. Sometimes you can just see disappointment on a person's face. I used to talk a lot in those meetings. I did not just go to sit in silence. I brought energy into that room. I like to think that I helped people feel a little better. I think he felt that too, and I think that is why he did not want me to leave. People have told me I talk too much, so maybe I'm just flattering myself, and everyone else wanted me to be quiet. But I like to think I was making a difference. He asked me again when I would be switching to a different group. I said I did not know yet. I told him I planned to keep coming through the end of the school year. I do not remember if I told him the name of my school, but I always wore royal blue and gold. He knew I went to a school nearby, just around the corner from the church. It would have not been hard to figure it out. Then in the last 2 weeks of senior year, everything got wild. We had senior ditch day, late night hangouts, sleepovers, goodbye parties, etc. I missed the AA meetings at the church, and then I switched to AA groups altogether. At graduation, everything was great, but then that guy showed up. It was so off. He did not know me like that. I had never invited him. We were not close. But there he was, smiling at me from the back like it was completely normal. He came over afterward and said he brought me a gift. It was a box of chocolates, and a note saying how much he would miss me. He said I should drop by the meetings again sometime. I uncomfortably said something like, thank you. I never went back. That whole situation was too weird. I did not want to see him again. Then, he showed up at my new job. I was working the cosmetics counter at a big department store. The cosmetics department actually had its own cash register. The first time he walked by, I noticed him. Then he came back the next day, and the day after that. He never spoke to me or asked for help. He just wandered around near my station, looking over at me like it was no big deal. He did not even try to be subtle. Eventually, I told one of my coworkers, the type of woman who does not play. She walked right up to him and asked him what he thought he was doing. She called him out in front of everybody. She said she knew exactly why he was there, and that it was creepy and toxic. A few shoppers turned around to see what was going on. His face turned red, and he walked away without saying anything. We told our manager afterward. The manager was glad we spoke up, but reminded us to let her know right away next time. There was no next time, though, since he never came back. I have not seen him since. Hopefully he got bored and moved on. I do not really care to find out what he wanted. Someone posted on another sub something about security, and for some reason, it reminded me of a really weird occurrence that took place when I was in college. I thought you all might get a kick out of it. For context, I'm a female, and when I was 20 years old, I subleased a friend's place for the summer. It was one of those houses built for college students, in a subdivision that's all college students. The house had 4 bedrooms. I rented 1 bedroom, but the other roommates were out of town for the summer as well, so I was alone. Coincidentally, one of my friends had a younger sibling that needed to find a home for her rescue pit bull for the summer. I've had boxers all my life and always loved pit bulls. I'd always been curious. To this day, I'm so glad I had that dog. I swear she saved me, possibly my life. I'm obsessive about 2 things because of who I am as a person. Cleaning and locking doors / setting alarms when I leave or I'm alone, which meant I was locking and setting the alarm a lot that summer because I was alone. The first night I had the pit bull, her name was June, I was a little nervous if I'm being honest. I didn't know it until my friend dropped the dog off, but my friend's sibling had just rescued this pit bull, like less than a month ago. Clearly I should have asked more questions. I was nervous because this dog was a bit apprehensive about me, and fresh out of the shelter or rescue, wherever my friend's sibling had found her. This was clear by the way she interacted with me, and the home surroundings. It was clear June had been abused. This dog had scars all over her body, and by the looks of it, had semi-recently given birth. Also worth noting, June was hulked out. This dog was absolutely jacked. I'd rehabbed the dog before, so I felt I was up to the challenge. After all, I had the entire summer, and it was just June and I. Note: this house had those magnetic fob locks. It had a door at the front of the house, which faced the rest of the houses in the neighborhood. There was also a door at the back of the house, which faced a sort of alley where I parked my car. I locked any door any time I used it, as well as the door to the bedroom whenever I went to sleep. I had June in the bedroom with me. There was an alarm in the house, but my roommates never actually set it up, and I didn't have the desire to do so, which meant I was relying on the locks. Night 1. I get into bed and direct June to her comfy plush bed that I put together for her. Later toys in it, super soft blankets, the works. I guess June decided nah, because the first thing I knew, she was in the bed with me, facing me with her head and all those teeth a few inches away from mine. I barely slept because I was so scared I'd accidentally roll onto her foot or something, scare her and end up with my face eaten off. Yes, I know this is silly, but it was what was going through my mind as I laid awake, staring at this massive, absolute unit of a dog. Night 2. Same thing, except I fell asleep. I woke up to the morning next to June staring directly into my soul. We're bonding. Night 3. We spent the evening watching movies, snuggling. I shared my pizza crusts, and she was definitely feeling the love, because she finally let me scratch her belly and started to act like a puppy, and less like the recently released inmate. Morning after night 3. I wake up and it's still really early in the morning, as in it's like 6:30 or 7 a.m. I usually get up around 9 a.m. for my class at noon. As I'm coming out of the sleepy stupor, trying to get my bearing and understand why on earth I'm awake so early, I clock June. June is absolutely snarling at the bedroom door, body slamming the door, sniffing while snarling the base of the door, lunging over and over again at the handle of the door. It was absolutely terrifying, but I wasn't afraid of her. I quickly realized something or someone is right outside my bedroom door and jiggling the door handle which I had locked. I do live in Texas, so I grabbed my 12 gauge that I kept under my bed and racked it. It's a very, very old and very loud gun. When I racked the gun, everything became very quiet. Who's there? Maintenance. We're maintenance. We didn't mean to scare you. We're here to fix the dishwasher. I didn't put in a maintenance request, and the dishwasher's in the kitchen on the first floor. Oh yeah, we were told no one was here. I'm training a new guy and I thought I'd show him what most of these houses look like inside. At this point, June is losing her ever-loving mind, and I'm armed, kind of annoyed that these idiots have woken me up so early. Then it dawns on me. I deadbolted the doors. Maybe the maintenance people had some way to bypass the deadbolts. I honestly don't know. This was a time when the magnetic fobs were kinda new, or new to the apartments near campus anyway. I should have been more scared, but I could tell these guys were soiling their pants between hearing the monster on the other side of the door and my gun racking. So I cracked the door a smidge, just enough for them to see the gun, and June foaming at the mouth, and so that I could get a look at their uniform, to confirm whether they were real servicemen or not. Weirdly enough, they didn't have on any uniforms. There were 3 men. 2 looked like they'd had it rough. Maybe they were in their early 40s, and the other guy looked like he was in his mid-20s. All 3 of these men were dirty, like they'd been sleeping outside maybe? The clothes appeared clean, but they had not seen a shower in a hot minute. I tell them to leave or I'd open the door and let June out. I tell them that I'll call the front office to clear this up, but for now they need to leave. And sure enough, all 3 men turned around and got out of my house. Once the men left, I checked the doors, and the back door was unlocked. I'd checked it the night before. No chance I'd forgotten to lock it. I called the front office the minute it was open at 8 a.m., to which they said they hadn't dispatched any maintenance men that day, and asked me for a description of the men. I'm not sure if they were ever caught, but I certainly hope so. I have never been so scared in my life. I'd used my gun when hunting, but never once pointed it at a person. In that specific housing complex, at least 5 women were attacked in the weeks before this encounter, so I was definitely on edge. I kept June the entire summer, and would have tried to adopt her, as we definitely bonded, and I knew she had my back. I felt so safe with her, but the place I was moving into wasn't a place she'd be happy, as it didn't have a yard, and it was really small. To this day, I'm convinced June saved me from something truly horrible. To the maintenance men, may we never meet again. This happened a while ago, but I still think about it. I moved to the Utah desert in my early 20s to work as a wilderness therapy trail staff member. It was a nomadic, primitive living program, so no base camps or modern comforts. We carried everything on our backs, relying on handmade packs, tarps, and whatever we could physically manage over 5 to 15-mile hikes across brutal terrain. We were in the middle of nowhere backcountry, nothing for miles, just under 3,000 square miles. We even had to gather supplies for our own bow drill kits to start fires. Some of us had hand drill kits too, but the blisters were never worth it. Shifts lasted anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks, and we were responsible for the campers 24/7. One of our duties was the 3 a.m. spot check. Every night, one staff member had to wake up, physically confirm every camper was accounted for, and send a GPS ping back to the office as a safety check. If the check was missed, the office was supposed to call at 4:30 a.m., but they never did, figures. It was not a favorable position to be in, so I always volunteered. You would physically have to get up, out of your sleeping bag, and walk around to ensure every head was counted. No one wanted this job, but it was an extra $5 a day on your paychecks that really added up. The staff were a really tight-knit group of dinguses, and we all loved each other. We would divide tasks fairly between each staff in our group. We were all close, and I was especially close with our direct supervisor, Jay. This will be useful later on. It was midwinter when I got assigned to the adult group. The only 18-plus camp in the program also happened to be co-ed. This meant some special requirements, like separate boys and girls camps a specific distance from our main camp. My friend Dave and I were stoked to be paired up and with the adults, as that meant less drama and more freedom to do cool things, like challenging hikes. We planned a route to a remote technicolored hill deep in a red sandpit. It would be a perfect campsite with tree cover and enough space to separate the boys' and the girls' camps. After a week of hiking, we arrived. The nearest service road, and I'm talking backcountry, barely a road kind of road, was a half-mile away and approached the hill from one direction. One way in, one way out situation for driving in supplies for the weekend. The company's transport vehicles would bring our food and water over this weekend. That night, after setting up camp, Dave and I stayed up late with a few campers, making a terrible attempt at wilderness desserts. Once the campers went to bed, we planned for the next day, put out the fire, and turned in. Then came 3 a.m. When I woke up for my spot check, something felt off. The camp wasn't just quiet, it was dead silent. No wind, no distant coyotes, no rustling trees or even the sound of scavengers searching for crumbs from our dinner in the sump. Just an unnatural, suffocating stillness. Snow fell in slow motion, the stars reflecting off of each flake. I didn't need a light because the soft light blanket was illuminated with a celestial glow. I started my midnight check. The girls' camp was intact, all 4 campers asleep where they should be. Then I walked the 150 yards towards the base camp, only hearing my own breath and the sound of my Chacos crunching the snow. Once in base camp, I bent down to check the fire pit. The coals were buried under the ash and the fresh snow, but I moved a small patch aside and saw they were still glowing, which would make morning fire prep easier. Then, I heard it. A man's voice, calling my name. It came from the boys' camp. The voice was deep, carrying through the silence. My mind raced to place it. Not one of the campers. Not Dave. I figured Dave was messing with me. People thought I wasn't scared of anything, which wasn't true. I just looked like I wasn't. But I headed towards the voice anyway, convinced it was a joke. At the boys' camp, I went straight to Dave's shelter to call his bluff. I shook his shoulder. No response. I climbed into his shelter and pressed a hand to his carotid artery just to make sure he wasn't dead. He had a palpable pulse, but no movement. His thoracic cavity was barely moving from his breath. This was the same guy who would wake up at a twig snapping, who snored like a chainsaw, yet now he was utterly silent. I even tried a sternum rub. Nothing. Uneasy, I checked the 4 male campers, all accounted for, all asleep, all breathing. Then, from beyond the campsite, my name. Again. The voice came from down the hill. The only way out was the far more distant service road behind us. Whatever was calling me wasn't standing on that road. It wasn't supposed to be there. I froze. My heartbeat thundered in my earlobes, and my butthole felt like it was in my throat. The snow kept falling, weightless. Time felt sluggish. Then, one last time, I heard my name again from behind the tree line. It was louder now. Closer. I felt a slight wave of relief when I remembered Jay was on shift. I pulled out the inReach and sent Jay a message. "Hey, are you there? Come say hi." If he was messing with me, he'd own up to it quickly, with a, "Ah, you got me." But no reply came. I power walked back to my shelter, buried myself in my sleeping bag, and clenched my eyes shut. As the first hints of daylight softened the sky, I finally slipped into bed. A few hours later, I woke up. No one was awake yet, so I collected my store of dry firewood I had hidden in my shelter the night before, and went off to start the morning fire. About a half an hour later, Dave emerged from the trees, rubbing his eyes and pulling on his jacket. He sat in silence for a long time, and I assumed he was contemplating breakfast. Finally, he piped up. "Hey, dude, did you have a weird dream last night?" "No, but boy do I have a story. You first, or me?" He wanted to hear mine. So I told him everything. The silence, the falling snow, his corpse of a body. The voice calling my name again and again and again from the dark. He listened wide-eyed. When I finished, he said, "In my dream, the group woke up, but we couldn't find you. We called Jay and he came with search and rescue. All they found was a trail of deer prints leading to your shelter into the woods, but that was it." We sat there, stunned. Me still processing what he had said in my slightly sleep-deprived, delirious state. We were quiet until the first camper came out and sat with us, and I checked my inReach. Jay had finally responded. He wasn't anywhere near us. He was back in town at the office all night. The campers woke up and we got on with our day, pushing the unease aside. The rest of the shift was uneventful, which is always good in the wilderness. The director of the program even showed up to have dinner with us and play some games. It was one of the better shifts I remember being out there. When shift change arrived, we said our goodbyes, but before I left, one of the campers pulled me aside. "I'm really glad you didn't go missing. I had a weird dream one night that first week. I woke up and saw you walking into the woods. I tried to scream for you, but I couldn't make a sound. There was a strange man calling your name." That last stretch before transport felt endless. I've worked many shifts since then, but I've never been close to soiling my pants in my adult life. Once I got back to the office, I noticed that the director of the program had left a note in my cubby. I guess Dave spoke with him the day he came to visit and told him about his dream and my spooky situation. The director was notorious for being highly superstitious and had left me a little pathway mantra tied to a necklace made out of hollowed-out juniper seed called ghost beads. This was one of my many unexplained situations out in the desert that I encountered, but nothing so far has kept me from spending as much time as I can sleeping under the stars.